Awareness is often described as the doorway to transformation, and when it comes to anxiety, this could not be more true. Anxiety thrives in the shadows of the mind, in places where thoughts go unnoticed, unchecked, and unquestioned. It gains strength when we are not conscious of it, when it becomes a background noise that influences every decision, reaction, and emotion we experience. The very first step in dealing with anxiety is to bring it into the light of awareness, to notice it, to acknowledge it, and to see it for what it is, a passing mental and emotional state, not a permanent identity. When we feel anxious, our first instinct is usually to resist. We may tell ourselves, "I shouldn't feel this way," or "I need to stop being anxious right now." But this resistance is what fuels anxiety further. Fighting anxiety is like trying to fight quicks, and the more we struggle against it, the deeper we sink. Awareness, on the other hand, works differently. Instead of resisting, it invites us to pause and observe. Simply saying, "I am feeling anxious right now," is a small but powerful act. It transforms anxiety from something unconscious into something conscious. This recognition separates us from the experience, allowing us to see it as an event happening in us rather than something that defines us. Think of it like standing on the side of a busy road. Cars pass by, rushing in all directions. Those cars represent anxious thoughts, racing and colliding. Most of the time, we run into the middle of the road, trying to stop the traffic, pushing one car away, chasing another. Naturally, this only causes chaos and more stress. Awareness allows us to step back onto the sidewalk. From there, we can simply watch the cars go by. We don't need to chase them, stop them, or control them. We just watch. That act of watching is awareness, and it brings peace even in the middle of mental chaos. When we are aware of anxiety, we begin to notice its patterns. We see what triggers it, perhaps a situation, a thought, or even a memory. We see how it shows up in the body, through racing heartbeat, tense shoulders, or shallow breath. We see how it changes our behavior, making us avoid situations or overthink choices. And by noticing all of this, we gain knowledge. Knowledge that anxiety is not random. Knowledge that it follows patterns. And with this knowledge comes power, the power to respond differently. Awareness also softens anxiety because it removes the fear of the unknown. Often, what makes anxiety unbearable is not the feeling itself, but our fear of the feeling. We think, what if it gets worse? What if I lose control? What if I can't handle this? But when we practice awareness, we learn that anxiety is just a wave. It rises, it peaks, and it falls. By observing it with calm attention, we realize that no matter how strong the wave feels, it always passes. This understanding weakens anxiety's grip. Another aspect of awareness is self-honesty. Many people push away their anxious feelings by pretending they are fine, wearing a mask of strength. While this may help temporarily, it does not bring lasting relief. True strength lies in honesty with oneself. Admitting, "Yes, I feel anxious right now," is not weakness, it is courage. It is the foundation of healing. In this honesty, we stop wasting energy on denial and instead use that energy for healing and growth. Awareness also connects us with the present moment. Anxiety usually pulls us into the future, to imagined scenarios of failure, rejection, or disaster. By being aware of our thoughts, we can notice when the mind is drifting away from the now. Awareness acts like a gentle hand on the shoulder, reminding us to come back to where we are, right here, right now. And when we are fully in the present, anxiety loses much of its fuel, because it cannot survive in the clarity of now. In truth, awareness is not about eliminating anxiety. It is about changing our relationship with it. Instead of being swallowed by it, we learn to stand beside it. Instead of identifying with it, we learn to observe it. Instead of running from it, we learn to sit with it. And in doing so, we discover something profound, that underneath the storm of anxiety there is a deeper self, a calm observer, a presence untouched by fear. Connecting with that deeper self is the true beginning of freedom. So, awareness is not just the first step in dealing with anxiety, it is the most important one. It is the step that shifts the ground beneath our feet, turning helplessness into empowerment, confusion into clarity, and fear into understanding. And with awareness, every other tool, breathing, positive self-talk, action, compassion, or support, becomes more powerful and effective. Because once you are aware, you are no longer trapped, you are awake. You are free to choose. Breathing is the simplest yet most powerful tool we have to calm the anxious mind. When anxiety takes over, our body instantly reacts. The heart races, the breath becomes shallow, muscles tense, and the nervous system shifts into survival mode. This is the body's fight or flight response, preparing us to face danger, even when there is no real danger around us. What many people don't realize is that the breath is the bridge between the mind and body. By consciously controlling our breathing, we send a signal back to the body that it is safe, and this message naturally quiets the storm of anxiety. When we are anxious, our breathing is usually fast and shallow, coming from the chest rather than the diaphragm. This type of breathing actually reinforces panic, because the brain interprets it as a sign of stress. However, when we slow down and deepen our breathing, it shifts the body into a state of calm. One of the simplest practices is the 4-4-4 technique. Breathe in slowly through the nose for 4 seconds, hold the breath for 4 seconds, and exhale through the mouth for 4 seconds. This rhythm engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest and relaxation. After just a few cycles, the heart rate slows, the muscles release tension, and the mind feels steadier. Another effective breathing method is belly breathing, also called diaphragmatic breathing. Place one hand on the chest and one on the belly, then inhale deeply so that the belly rises while the chest remains still. This encourages oxygen to flow more efficiently through the body and grounds the mind in the present moment. With regular practice, this type of breathing not only reduces anxiety in the moment, but also trains the body to remain calmer during future stressful situations. Breathing is only one part of the process. To truly calm the mind, grounding is equally important. Anxiety tends to pull us into imagined futures, creating a flood of what-if scenarios. Grounding techniques bring us back into the present moment, reminding us of where we are and helping us to feel anchored in reality. One popular grounding method is the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. Notice 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This exercise shifts focus from the racing mind to the real, tangible environment around you, giving the brain a sense of safety and control. Even simple actions can serve as grounding. Feeling the floor beneath your feet, running your hands under cold water, holding onto an object like a stone or piece of fabric, or even stepping outside and focusing on the sounds of nature can redirect your mind from spiraling thoughts. Grounding works because it interrupts the cycle of worry and gives the mind a focal point in the here and now. Breathing and grounding together create a powerful practice. Imagine sitting in a storm with winds and thunder all around. Breathing acts as the steady rhythm of your heartbeat, a reminder of inner strength, while grounding acts as the roots of a tree, keeping you connected and unmoved by the chaos. Together, they transform the way we experience anxiety, not as something to fear, but as something we can manage with skill and presence. What makes these practices so valuable is that they are always available. You don't need special tools, you don't need to wait for the right environment, and you don't need anyone else. At any moment, wherever you are, you can take a slow breath, place your feet firmly on the ground, and return to yourself. Over time, this becomes not only a way to calm anxiety, but also a habit of living with more presence and inner peace. Ultimately, breathing and grounding teach us that calm is not found outside, it is created within. By learning to guide the breath and anchor the mind, we reclaim control from anxiety and return to the only place where peace is ever possible, the present moment. The voice inside our head is one of the most powerful forces shaping how we experience anxiety. For many people, that inner dialogue becomes a constant stream of worry, criticism, and fearful predictions. Anxiety thrives on the questions we ask ourselves in silence. What if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if something goes terribly wrong? These what-if scenarios feed the nervous system, tricking the body into believing danger is real, even when it exists only in imagination. The result is a cycle where anxious thoughts create anxious feelings, which then fuel more anxious thoughts. To break this cycle, we must learn to shift the inner dialogue. Shifting the inner dialogue does not mean pretending everything is perfect or forcing toxic positivity. It means consciously choosing a way of speaking to ourselves that brings clarity, courage, and perspective instead of fear. For example, when anxiety whispers, "What if I fail?" the shift is to respond, "So what if I fail? Failure is not the end, it is an opportunity to learn and grow." This change might seem small, but it transforms the energy behind the thought. Instead of fueling panic, it invites resilience. Instead of shrinking in fear, it opens the door to action. One powerful practice in shifting inner dialogue is reframing. Reframing means taking the same situation and looking at it from a different angle. If the inner voice says, "This is too much for me, I can't handle it," the reframe could be, "This is challenging, but I have handled difficulties before, and I can handle this too." The facts remain the same, the challenge is real, but the perspective changes, and with it, the emotional response softens. It is also important to recognize how harsh self-talk feeds anxiety. Many people speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to a friend. They call themselves weak, stupid, or unworthy, and these words deepen the feeling of fear and helplessness. Shifting the inner dialogue requires cultivating self-compassion, learning to treat oneself with kindness and understanding. Instead of saying, "I shouldn't feel anxious," "I'm pathetic," we can say, "I'm feeling anxious right now, and that's okay. This is a human experience, and it will pass." This simple change turns self-criticism into self-support, which is one of the most effective antidotes to anxiety. Another method for shifting inner dialogue is to ask empowering questions instead of fearful ones. Anxiety's favorite question is, "What if?" But we can train ourselves to ask, "What else is possible?" instead of, "What if I fail this interview?" We could ask, "What if this interview helps me grow, no matter the outcome? What if this is a chance to show my strengths?" The mind loves to answer questions, so the type of questions we ask determines the type of answers we get. By asking empowering questions, we give our mind better material to work with. Shifting the inner dialogue also involves recognizing that thoughts are not facts. Just because the mind says something does not make it true. When anxiety says, "This will end badly," we can respond with, "That is only a thought, not a prediction of reality." This creates distance between the thinker and the thought. Instead of blindly believing every fearful story, we step into the role of observer, choosing which thoughts to follow and which to let go. Over time, changing inner dialogue becomes a habit. At first, it requires effort, catching negative self-talk, pausing, and replacing it with something kinder or stronger. But with practice, the new voice becomes natural. It becomes the supportive companion that guides us through challenges, rather than the critic that pulls us down. The most beautiful thing about shifting the inner dialogue is that it empowers us from within. External circumstances may remain uncertain, but the way we speak to ourselves determines how we experience them. When the inner voice is calm, encouraging, and compassionate, anxiety loses much of its power. The mind that once felt like an enemy becomes an ally, guiding us not toward fear, but toward courage and peace. Anxiety often feels like a heavy weight pressing down on us, keeping us frozen in place. It convinces us that we are powerless, that the challenges before us are too overwhelming to face. The mind races, but the body feels paralyzed. This is one of the cruel tricks of anxiety. It thrives in stagnation. The longer we remain still, trapped in endless cycles of thought, the stronger anxiety grows. The antidote to this paralysis is action. Not necessarily big or dramatic action, but small, steady steps that shift our energy and bring us back into motion. Taking small actions works because action interrupts the cycle of overthinking. When you are caught in anxious thoughts, the mind imagines countless scenarios, often magnifying fear. By choosing to act, even in a small way, you redirect attention away from the endless loop of what-ifs, and towards something tangible in the present. It could be as simple as standing up and stretching, drinking a glass of water, or writing down your thoughts in a journal. These actions may seem insignificant, but they send a powerful message to the brain: I am not stuck. I can move. I can choose. One of the best small actions for reducing anxiety is physical movement. Exercise, even in its gentlest forms, has a profound effect on the nervous system. A short walk outside, a few minutes of stretching, or some light yoga can release built-up tension from the body and calm the mind. Physical activity increases endorphins, the body's natural mood boosters, which help counteract the stress hormones that fuel anxiety. Importantly, it doesn't require hours of effort. Just 10 minutes of movement can make a noticeable difference. Another effective small action is organizing or tidying your environment. Anxiety often creates a sense of inner chaos, and our surroundings can mirror that state. By cleaning a desk, arranging a shelf, or simply making the bed, we create a sense of order outside of ourselves, which can restore a feeling of control inside. These small wins build momentum. Each completed task reinforces the message that we are capable, and capability is the opposite of helplessness, which anxiety tries to impose. Small actions can also take the form of creative expression. Writing in a journal, doodling, playing a musical instrument, or cooking a meal can all serve as outlets for nervous energy. Creativity channels anxious thoughts into something productive, transforming worry into art, structure, or nourishment. The process doesn't need to be perfect or impressive. What matters is that it shifts focus away from fear and toward creation. Connecting with others is another vital step. Anxiety often isolates us, making us believe we must face everything alone. But reaching out to a friend with a simple text, making a phone call, or spending time with a loved one can ease the burden. Human connection provides reassurance and perspective. Sometimes, just hearing another voice or sharing what we're going through lightens the load. It's also important to recognize that small actions are not about escaping anxiety, but about showing ourselves that we can coexist with it while still moving forward. Anxiety says, "You cannot do anything until you feel better." Small actions reply, "I can take a step, even if I feel anxious." This shift breaks the illusion of being trapped. It teaches us that we don't need to wait for perfect calm before living our lives. We can live despite the anxiety, and in doing so, we reduce its power. Over time, these small steps accumulate. Just as drops of water fill a jar, consistent small actions create lasting change. What once felt impossible begins to feel manageable. We build resilience not by leaping over mountains, but by taking steady steps along the path. Ultimately, the practice of taking small actions teaches us a profound truth. Anxiety does not control us. Even when it feels overwhelming, we always have the ability to act, to choose, to move forward. Each small action is an act of courage, a reminder that we are stronger than our fears. And as these steps add up, they carry us out of paralysis and into a life defined not by anxiety, but by presence, progress, and possibility. Anxiety has a way of making us feel like we are our own worst enemy. When we are caught in its grip, not only do we feel fear and unease, but we also add another layer of suffering by judging ourselves for having those feelings. We think, "I shouldn't feel this way. I'm weak. Other people handle life better than me." This harsh inner criticism deepens the wound, leaving us not only anxious, but also ashamed of our anxiety. The path to healing begins when we replace judgment with compassion, when we learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer a dear friend. This is the essence of self-compassion. Practicing self-compassion means acknowledging that anxiety is a human experience, not a personal flaw. Everyone struggles at times, even if they don't show it outwardly. Reminding ourselves of this simple truth can reduce the sense of isolation that anxiety often creates. Instead of seeing anxiety as proof that we are broken, we can see it as part of the shared human condition. This perspective softens the harsh edges of self-criticism and opens the door to acceptance. Acceptance does not mean resignation. It does not mean saying, "This is who I am and I will never change." Rather, it means acknowledging the reality of how we feel without adding unnecessary judgment. When we say to ourselves, "I feel anxious right now, and that's okay," we remove the pressure to be perfect and allow space for healing. This gentle acknowledgement creates a supportive inner environment, one where growth becomes possible. One way to cultivate self-compassion is through mindful self-talk. Instead of letting the inner critic run wild, we can consciously choose words that comfort and encourage. For instance, if the inner voice says, "You're pathetic for being nervous about this," we can respond with, "It's normal to feel nervous. Many people would feel the same in this situation, and I'm doing my best." Over time, this shift in language rewires the way we relate to ourselves, turning the inner dialogue from an enemy into a friend. Self-compassion also involves caring for our bodies and minds with kindness. Anxiety can be exhausting, and often we push ourselves harder when we feel weak, believing that productivity will prove our worth. But true healing often comes from rest, nourishment, and gentle care. Taking a break, eating a healthy meal, or getting enough sleep are not acts of laziness. They are acts of compassion. They send the message to ourselves, I matter, my well-being is important. Another aspect of self-compassion is forgiving ourselves for past mistakes. Anxiety loves to replay old memories, making us relive moments of failure or embarrassment. But holding on to those moments only fuels more anxiety. Compassion invites us to look at those past experiences with understanding, to say, I was doing the best I could with what I knew at the time. Forgiveness releases the burden of the past and allows us to move forward with lighter hearts. Practicing self-compassion also means allowing ourselves to seek help without shame. Many people see asking for support as a weakness, but in truth, it is one of the most compassionate choices we can make for ourselves. Whether it is talking to a trusted friend, joining a support group, or speaking to a professional, reaching out is an act of kindness to oneself. It is recognizing that we do not need to carry everything alone. In the long run, self-compassion transforms the way we experience anxiety. Instead of being trapped in a cycle of fear and self-judgment, we develop resilience rooted in kindness. We learn that it is okay to stumble, it is okay to be vulnerable, and it is okay to take time to heal. Self-compassion reminds us that we are worthy of love and understanding, even when we are struggling. When we treat ourselves with compassion, anxiety no longer feels like a battle we must fight alone. It becomes an experience we can meet with patience and care. And as we cultivate this kindness toward ourselves, we discover that compassion is not just a tool for dealing with anxiety. It becomes a way of living, one that brings peace, strength, and a deeper connection to our own humanity. One of the most challenging aspects of dealing with anxiety is the belief that we must handle it all on our own. Many people carry the silent burden of worry and fear because they think asking for help is a sign of weakness, or that others will not understand what they are going through. This mindset often makes anxiety heavier, turning it into a secret struggle hidden behind smiles or silence. The truth is, seeking support is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is an act of strength to admit when we need guidance, encouragement, or simply the presence of another human being to remind us that we are not alone. Anxiety thrives in isolation. When we are left alone with our thoughts, the mind tends to exaggerate fears, making them seem larger than they are. Sharing those thoughts with someone else, whether a trusted friend, family member, or professional, helps break this cycle. Speaking out loud often brings clarity, because what feels overwhelming in the mind can sound more manageable once expressed. Sometimes, the very act of putting anxiety into words relieves part of its weight. It is like opening a window in a stuffy room. Suddenly, there is more air, more space, and more light. Support can take many forms. It might be as simple as having a conversation with a close friend who listens without judgment. A compassionate listener does not need to solve our problems. Their presence alone offers comfort. It reminds us that we are not strange or broken for feeling anxious, but human. Knowing that someone else sees us and accepts us despite our struggles is deeply healing. Family can also provide a network of care, especially when they understand that anxiety is not just worrying too much, but a genuine emotional challenge. Sometimes, loved ones may not fully understand what anxiety feels like, and this can create frustration on both sides. But even then, explaining what we are experiencing can build bridges of understanding. Patience and honesty open the door to stronger support from those who care for us most. Professional support is another powerful resource. Therapists, Counselors and psychologists are trained to help people navigate anxiety with proven techniques such as cognitive, behavioral therapy, mindfulness practices, and stress management tools. Speaking with a professional creates a safe space to explore the roots of anxiety, identify triggers, and develop strategies for coping. For some, medication prescribed by a doctor may also be part of the solution, offering relief when anxiety becomes too overwhelming to manage alone. There is no shame in this. Just as we would seek medical treatment for a physical illness, seeking help for mental health is equally valid and necessary. Support can also be found in groups and communities. Support groups, whether in person or online, connect people who share similar struggles. In these spaces there is an unspoken understanding. You are not alone. I have felt this too. Hearing others share their stories provides comfort and hope. It creates a sense of belonging, replacing isolation with community. Sometimes, knowing that others have faced anxiety and learned to manage it can inspire us to believe that we can too. It is important to remember that seeking support is not about dependence. It is not handing over control of our lives to others. Rather, it is about recognizing that we are social beings who are meant to share burdens as well as joys. Just as we lean on others in times of grief, illness, or difficulty, it is natural and healthy to lean on others in times of anxiety. Ultimately, seeking support teaches us humility and connection. It reminds us that strength is not measured by how much we can endure alone, but by our willingness to reach out when the weight becomes too heavy. By asking for help, we not only lighten our own load, but also give others the chance to show love and compassion. And in this mutual exchange, both giver and receiver grow stronger. So when anxiety feels overwhelming, when silence feels suffocating, remember this. You do not have to face it by yourself. There are hands willing to hold you, ears ready to listen, and hearts prepared to understand. Seeking support is not the end of strength. It is the beginning of healing.